When it comes to every new Pokemon card set, there's a bunch of cards that people consider bulk. Cards that are worthless, cards that you'll probably throw away, put in a box and forget about, or sell to your local game shop for a penny each. In today's video, I'll be sharing with you guys the top 15 Pokemon cards to take out of your bulk in case you want to play the game competitively, or if you want to maximize the value out of your cards, because the value of these cards could go up over time. Coming in at number 15, we have Charmander. Charmander right here, of course, is the basic Pokemon that evolves into Charizard EX, and you're gonna need to have at least 4 copies of this in your arsenal at all times in case you want to end up playing Charizard EX. Having 4 of these Charmanders, which is the best one right now to use for a Charizard EX deck, is going to be very handy. This Charmander in particular is really good because it has the attack Heat Tackle, which does a whopping 30 damage, which is a lot of damage for just 1 energy, which is enough to honestly clean up some Pokemon if you need to knock them out that way. Now on to another basic Pokemon you're going to want to take out of your bulk. We have Larvitar. Larvitar is an awesome Pokemon because it evolves into one of my favorite Pokemon, Tyranitar. Now, Tyranitar EX is currently not positioned to be a very great deck in the current meta. If you're going to play a Stage 2 Pokemon from Obsidian Flames, play Charizard, it's much better. However, down the road, Tyranitar stonks could get better depending on how things shape up. This is currently the best Larvitar that you can have in your decks right now. You're going to want this one because it has 70 HP, which is great against Sableye because Sableye can no longer knock out 2 of your 60 HP Larvitars at the same time. And on top of that, this Larvitar has a 1 retreat cost. Now, if you're a manipulative gaslighter, I mean, if you like to play controlling decks, Team Stargrunt is a supporter card you're going to want to include in your decks. Team Stargrunt says put an energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon on top of their deck. Now, this is a very niche kind of card, so it's not going to be seeing playability in a lot of decks. However, when the time comes when you might need a copy of this, you're going to want to make sure you have it on hand in your, stash of supporter cards. So make sure you have at least like 2 or 3 of these in your inventory, just in case you want to play a control sort of deck. I feel like this card would be really good at slowing down your opponent, especially if you don't want them to draw into a particular card. Maybe you have them in a path lock, and maybe you want to reduce their energy count so they can't use that particular attack in their next turn. Then Team Stargrunt might fit that need. So yeah, it's kind of weird. It's a goofy card, but at the end of the day, it's meant for control type of decks. Now, another good supporter in this set you might want to take out is a holo rare. It is Geeta. Geeta is a very unique card because it is a supporter card that stops you from being able to attack. And usually, you're going to want to attack on your turn. That's one of the most important things you can do. You literally can only do 1 attack per turn. Geeta's ability is actually really strong, so that kind of makes up for the reason why you can't attack after using it. Because if you could, it would be busted. Search your deck, 2 energy cards, put them onto your Pokemon, you can't attack. Think about it like this. You're going to be able to set up your board and get those certain attacks off that you want in a future turn. And hey, if you don't even need to attack that turn, then Geeta says, just put some energies on your Pokemon and you're chilling. Again, this is a very niche kind of card. It probably won't see a lot of play in a majority of decks, but again, this is why it's an underrated list, the top 15 underrated Pokemon cards from Obsidian Flames. So take Geeta out of your holo rares. I know there's also non-holo rare versions available from Build and Battle Kits if you want to go the non-holo route. And there are some pretty cool full arts versions of Geeta. So if you do end up pulling it, most decks will probably only run 1 to 2 copies at most, I'd say. So if you want to bling out your Geetas, you can. I honestly don't care about Geeta. I haven't played the game, so I don't know anything about them. Next up, we have another supporter, Poppy. Poppy is a cutie patootie. It looks like a little kid wearing a bib. Or is that a key? Bruh. Is a key? I don't know. It has one of those visors that I always see old ladies wear when they go to like parks and stuff like that. But it says, move up to 2 energy from one of your Pokemon to another. So there's a card like this already in the game, and it's an item card. It's called Energy Switch. It's been in the game like since it ever was created, like from the dawn of time. Energy Switch is an item card, and it only lets you do 1 energy. Poppy says move up to 2 energy. So it can be any type of energy, not just basic energy. I think Energy Switch is for basic energy only. I might be wrong. I'll have a correction on screen if I'm wrong. Poppy is also a really selective kind of card in your deck where you're only going to probably need 2 copies at the most. The value of these like full arts are really low right now, so if you're going to be investing into full arts that you might want to play with down the road, now's a good time to buy them because decks are not going to be seeing usage for cards like Poppy anytime soon. So don't get caught lacking by having none of these available in your inventory when you're building your decks in the future. Next up, we have Town Store, one of the few stadium cards in this set that released. It's a card that allows you to search up for 1 tool card in your deck and add it to your hand per turn. Now, right now, this card is literally built from the ground up for Revavroom EX, a Pokemon which allows you to have up to 4 Pokemon tools on it at the same time. Usually you can only have 1 Pokemon tool on a Pokemon at a time. The only other Pokemon I can think of that allows you to have more than 1 tool on it at a time is Honchkrow V, which doesn't really see much play. And yeah, Revavroom EX being a new EX Pokemon from Obsidian Flames, Town Store is the go-to stadium card. Cleffa is back. We haven't seen Cleffa in a long time, along with a lot of baby Pokemon in general. Now, Cleffa is a very weak Pokemon at first glance, but let's just take a closer look at it. You got the attack right here, Grasping Draw. Now, this is an attack that has that gray little marker, and that means you don't need any energies on it at all to use the attack. Most Pokemon that have this kind of marker are Hisuian Pokemon from like Astral Radiance and whatnot. That's like the special character trait a lot of Hisuian Pokemon have, an attack that you can attack with no energy cost. Grasping Draw says, draw cards until you have 7 cards in your hand. This is a really good way to end your turn, especially if you have a very limited hand size. And on top of that, it has free retreat. So if you end up starting the game and Cleffa is in your active, you can retreat into whatever you want and pivot from that. Or if your Pokemon gets knocked out, it's always great to have a free retreater on the board. Now, the drawback, the downside, the thing that really sucks about Cleffa is that it has a whopping 30 HP. Bruh. It is a liability, but in the right deck, it has a place to shine. Now, this next card might surprise you, the fact that it is inside of Obsidian Flames, and that's because when Pokemon reprints cards, usually they don't reprint them so close to each other when they just release them for the very first time. You know, there's reprints of Switch, there's reprints of Energy Switch. Reprinting a supporter so quickly after originally released from the Scarlet and Violet base set is unheard of. So here we have it. This is Arven. Arven is a fantastic supporter card, which allows you to grab an item and a tool from your deck and add it to your hand. Usually that tool is going to be something like a Choice Belt or a Bravery Charm, or most commonly a Forest Heal Stone. Really depends on the deck that you're playing. And I really do see Arven becoming a staple card in the future for a lot of decks. Pokemon told us a while back that they wanted to include more comeback mechanic cards, and that's where this next card comes into play. This is Letter of Encouragement. It is a card that says you can only use it if your opponent knocked out one of your Pokemon during your last turn, or during their last turn. Very, very unique kind of circumstance where you can't play this card. If you don't meet these requirements of your Pokemon getting knocked out beforehand, you just can't use it. It's just like the supporter card Raihan, and Raihan allows you to attach an energy, a basic energy, from your discard pile onto your Pokemon, and then search your deck for any card you want. So this card, depending on the deck, could see some decent amount of play. Next up, we have Rhyme. Rhyme is a pretty unique card. So you have that plus draw 3 ability, or that effect. However, it says switch out your opponent's Pokemon out of their active position with something else. So your opponent gets to pick the Pokemon. So it's similar to like Escape Rope, where they get to choose the Pokemon that's going into the active. So it's half an Escape Rope, but you get to draw 3. So if you need to stall out a turn for whatever reason, Rhyme could fit the bill. Maybe you have to gust up a Pokemon and they only have 1 or 2 other options available. That's where this card could be pretty useful as well. But it is a supporter card with a very niche kind of play style, so you might not see too many of these cards in decks anytime soon. Rhyme could be eventually useful in a Glomora EX deck where your opponent has their bench limited to 3 Pokemon at most. So if they have a limited selection of Pokemon they can switch into, that could be useful. But yeah, that's Rhyme. Let's get to the next card. We have Pokemon League Headquarters. This card is pretty exciting. Pokemon League Headquarters is one of those counter stadiums which is very, very useful against particular decks. So of course you have stadiums like Path to the Peak, which counters decks that use heavy abilities. But if you want to counter decks that have a lot of basic Pokemon as their attackers, like my favorite deck, Miraidon. However, the main deck you're probably going to counter using this card is Turbo Lost Box. Turbo Lost Box is a deck that thrives on basic attackers. You do get to hurt Sableye, Raikou, Dragonite, and any other basic attacker your opponent might have in their deck. It sets them back because they have to have 1 more extra colorless energy on their Pokemon in order to attack. So if you have this, you know, out on the field and they don't have a stadium to bump it, and maybe they only have so many energies left in deck that they can use, they're not going to be able to attack, and it's going to feel really good not getting attacked. The next 2 cards are a combo, a duo, so to speak, because you can't have one without the other, or else it's kind of pointless. So the next 2 cards are Lunatone and Solrock, and that is because these 2 cards need to be on the field together in order for Lunatone's ability New Moon to work. And New Moon says if you have a Solrock in play, prevent all effects of any stadium done to your Pokemon. So in this current meta that we're going into, there's going to be a lot of ability heavy Pokemon. So by having Path to the Peak out and having Lunatone and Solrock on your field, you're still able to use your own abilities, and your opponent just has to sit there and watch. This duo is very important for Glimmora EX, along with Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX that run Path to the Peak. So yeah, I played against that deck, that's why I know about it. But yeah, if you want to use Path to the Peak and you have ability Pokemon in your own deck, having these two cards are quite useful. You can also synergize these cards very well with Fog Crystal, which is a item card which lets you grab a basic Psychic Energy or a basic Psychic Pokemon from your deck into your hand. So honestly, if you are playing a Psychic deck that wants to use some abilities, Lunatone and Solrock honestly might become like staples for certain decks. And not to mention, if you are forced to have either Lunatone or Solrock on the field, Solrock is the better of the two if you have to have like one just left, because it has the attack Call for Family, which lets you put 2 more Pokemon from your deck onto your bench. And hey, you can use that exact attack to grab a Lunatone. Now when it comes to Obsidian Flames, a lot of people were kind of disappointed with the lack of new competitive cards that would really change or shape the meta, but there was one card in particular that is fantastic, which will absolutely see a lot more play going forward, and that is Pidgeot EX. And what do you need for Pidgeot EX to be played? You need Pidgey. Get a Pidgey. Pidgey's good. And before we get to this last card, I want to ask you guys the comment question of the day, which is, which card of these top 15 do you think is going to see the most play going forward? Let me know. I'm curious what you guys are thinking. And this is just such a nerdy video. Like, if you're actually watching this video, shout out to you. It is like, this is not a mainstream video at all. So thank you. Hit that like button so you don't miss more videos like this. And yeah, the last card is going to be, you guessed it, if you play the game a lot, Vengeful Punch. This card is really, really good, especially against one of the best decks in the game, Gardevoir, which has to charge up their Pokemon by hurting itself and by putting damage counters on their Pokemon. So there's often times where a baby Gardevoir has to attack you and it has 20 or 40 HP left. Well, hey, if that Gardevoir happens to knock out your Pokemon, it's going to go down with it because it has to put 4 damage counters on it. There's a reason why Vengeful Punch is #1 on this list, and that's because it is a very versatile card that can be squeezed into a lot of decks, especially if you want to just counter Gardevoir by having one in your deck. It doesn't really hurt at all. It being a tool card, it is searchable with cards like Arven, and could you imagine the look on your face if you load up a Revavroom EX with 3 to 4 Vengeful Punches on it? If your Revavroom is going down, the Pokemon that attacked it is going down with it. If you guys missed it, you guys can click on screen right now to check out the top 10 meta decks from Obsidian Flames, along with the top 10 rogue decks when that video comes out. And if you want to see the pre-release tournament vlog for Obsidian Flames, that's on screen too. Click on one of those if you want to hang out some more, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.